I'm Emerson Sklar. I'm the Chief Evangelist of Amazon Alexa, and I'm joined by Cobus Kok, VP of Product for Priceline, who leads the AI Experiences team. Cobus, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, Emerson.
So take us back to when Priceline started experimenting with AI. What was that like first aha moment where you knew this was something that's going to be really meaningful for the business?
You know, we've had so many aha moments. I have stopped counting. Like this was like I think 3 years ago, right?
Okay,
Just
yep.
when LLMs, came to the forefront and people started using this technology and realizing there's, this is different.
Something
There's
there.
something here, right? And our CEO was a vision. He, is a visionary, and he tasked us with figuring out how to use this technology, right? And my team at the time, we were building checkout experiences, and we were, figuring out how to optimize for conversion and payment, right? And we thought maybe there's something here. Maybe we can build a chatbot that can answer customer questions before they check out. And maybe if we do that, we could increase conversion, right? In hindsight, it seems kind of pretty simple, but it was kind of an unconventional approach, right? Most companies started top of the funnel, discovery,
Absolutely.
right? And we started right at the end when a customer's about to click book. So we built a prototype, and it took us a couple of months, right? And we were new to the technology, figuring it out, and we were actually able to launch it pretty quickly, right? We were the first OTA with one of the first with a chatbot in market, and within days we realized we're onto something.
Really?
Customers had, lots of questions, right? Our hypothesis was like proven overnight. Customers were asking
Ones they could solve other ways, perhaps.
right, like, can I bring my pet? Turned out to be the number one question. I was not expecting that. I think the lesson for us, right, the aha moment was customers, they don't want to go through tons of information to find the thing that's relevant to them. They just want to, ask. And if we can provide them with that answer that then, resolves their uncertainty, then they can proceed to booking. So, from there, obviously, we've had many aha moments. Sure. We, I think for me personally, the realization that this is a game changer for our industry was huge. Priceline was one of the first travel agencies, online travel agencies, right? Selling, rental cars or hotels or flights online. And the whole industry evolved to actually offer a very similar product. If you look at, online travel agencies today, it's a very familiar flow that has been optimized, meticulously over time through A/B testing. And it involves, a customer giving us their destination, which is usually a city, dates, and then, we give them tons of options. And we've developed very functional tools as an industry to give customers access to this massive breadth of inventory that we've sourced, right? And we connect to millions of hotels globally, and customers can book basically anything. But the problem is, the actual decision making process, right? And, I call it the planning tax. Like the point of going from, okay, here are, hundreds of options to this is the right one for me. I think that's the big aha moment for me, is that we can actually make that process so much easier and simpler. So
That's a really interesting point, because I think a lot of big companies have that same sort of challenge, that like paralysis of choice, that some companies try and adopt AI in everything, and they struggle because it's just too much to take on. And then some see, I have a million different options, I don't know where to start, and they're kind of stuck. How do you prioritize where is worth investing for the business, or where is worth focusing on?
I mean, so that's a good question. There is, obviously low-hanging fruit in terms of, adding AI onto traditional products.
Sure.
And, we're trying to do both at Priceline. We're integrating AI into our traditional booking funnels. Penny, our AI agent, is actually a number of things. On the one hand, it's a co-pilot, assistant that helps customers through this traditional booking funnel, answering questions, and that's where we started, right? The original, the checkout use case in Penny is now available on every single step of the traditional funnel, whether you're booking a hotel, a flight, or a rental car. But actually, in where we're headed, I think is something different, and it's an AI agent that can solve any travel-related problem and can do anything a human agent would have done, right? So in some sense, in my opinion, our industry is going full circle, right? From, you know, this point where currently the customer has to do a lot of the work in terms of selecting, to in the future having an AI agent that knows, that really understands what is it that you want based on, you know, your past booking history, based on what you specifically ask for, and, you know, not only helping you through the booking process, but, you know, travel is a very messy thing, right? Things go wrong, flights get canceled, hotels need to be rebooked, and I think the beauty of having a sort of an all-purpose AI travel agent is really to actually make it go smoother when things go wrong, right? Not only this discovery part, but actually to make the entire travel experience much more seamless. So, you know, to answer your question, we're really investing in both the traditional experiences, but also trying to see where can we take this, how can we push this further, and, you know, that includes things like voice, right? Obviously, Alexa is one of the world's greatest voice agents, and Priceline was one of the first companies, if not, you know, I think we're probably still the first OTA with a voice you know, agent in the market. It's so different to speak to, you know, an AI and just in a conversation explain what it is that you want, you know, versus trying to through traditional tools get what you want. It's a game changer.
And I like that idea of how different it is to actually talk or text in some cases to a very natural conversational assistant. And it's amazing to me, certainly over the last 6 months, but especially the last few years, amazing how customer and consumer sentiment has changed, that people are a lot more comfortable with it now than they were even just a little while ago. But I think for any kind of consumer-facing brand, we still do want to provide that personal touch, that human touch. So how do you balance the automation and all of the benefits for the business and for the customer that come with that, with still providing the human touch in a customer service kind of standpoint?
So I think on the one hand, you know, one of our objectives is to make the Penny, you know, conversational AI experience as human as possible, right? And that means being truthful, being honest, being transparent, meeting the customer where they are, right? Like making sure that that Penny's tone matches the customer's circumstance, right? It's very different. A customer, you know, having to solve an urgent problem and, you know, really being stressed about that versus a customer that's planning a romantic, you know, honeymoon, right? So there's that. Obviously, the technology is getting so good at being able to do that, you know. But on the other hand, there's the human aspect where, you know, take customer service, for instance. We have a huge customer service team. In the past, you know, that team size is limited, which means if there's a hurricane and we need to, you know, use that same team of agents to answer the phones, and the phone, you know, number of phone calls exponentially go up, that means you have to wait 15 minutes. Now, Penny is already answering the phone and doing that first level of triage, right? Because some customer problems are easy to solve. And that allows our agents to actually work on the harder problems, right? And for them to add more value and not to do repetitive tasks. So, you know, for us, automation is not about replacing humans. To the contrary, it's having the humans do more valuable work, right? And we can raise the bar of our product in the process.
And I love that notion, because even on my team, the teams that I interact with, there are people across the technical to non-technical spectrum, across the junior employee to very senior employee spectrum. And it does, I love what you said, that it does sort of up level the impact that people can have. It lets them focus on the higher value tasks, the more specialized tasks, perhaps, lets them learn new tasks. How has your team adapted to this new Gen AI development creation world?
I mean, it's still a work in progress. It changes how people work together, you know, how we build software. And, you know, there's no magic rule book you can follow. You have to be very hands-on. So I think, you know, in terms of how you build product, it's very different building, you know, deterministic products where you design something, you know exactly what it's going to look like, you know exactly what it's going to do. It's sort of, if this, then that. That's the kind of thinking. And then once it's perfected, you just test it and make. Now you're dealing with a probabilistic, you know, system where you have to set the boundaries and you have to understand that things don't always,
Yeah.
you you can't with 100% certainty predict what's going to happen. So you have to look at the system in a different way. So, in terms of how you do that organizationally, I think small teams, nimble teams, teams that, really understand the technology and have a hands-on feel for it, that's important. But also I see roles changing, and there's more fluidity in terms of what each team member does on the team. And
Sure.
and you can't, like, the rigid boundaries that we saw in the past between, for example, a software engineer and a product manager.
Yeah.
That's no more. Our product managers are now coding Penny with natural language.
Wow.
Right? And I personally wrote a lot of Penny's original prompts myself, which, my coding skills have long, gone stale. But it's so, instead of just defining how a product's going to work, writing it down in a PRD document, I'm actually shaping the product in real time and seeing how that impacts real customers, right? Likewise, an engineer now needs to put his product hat on and understand that, the they're not just coding, they're managing a team of agents to get to an outcome. So, I think it's still early. It's going to be interesting to see where we are in a year from now. But companies really need to understand that it's a game changer on all levels, right?
And it is super fun just to be able to experiment and see what happens, because like you said, it is no longer deterministic. You can make very, very minor changes and not know exactly what the downstream impact is going to be.
Yep.
Are there any particular experiences that stick out as very comical ones that you guys have had, or very surprising ones as you've gone through this journey?
That's where evaluations are important, right? Because you need to measure the system at scale.
Sure.
And, when we launched Penny originally, we heavily relied on manual review of transcripts. I have personally read, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of because that's the only way you get a sense of how this product you're building is really, performing out in the wild, right? Like, you can't prepare or predict every single scenario. So, that's really important. But if I think back to examples, of surprise, it's one thing to define in, for example, a personality prompt, how the model should react in different circumstances. It's another to see how the AI is actually in the moment meeting the customer where they're at.
Yeah.
Like a good example, a customer, I'm thinking back to a customer booking accommodation for a funeral where, the guideline is, what would a human travel agent do, right? It's not if a customer asks about a funeral, do that. Right? There's a big difference. And to actually then see, the model responding in a way that, provides the right emotional tone in that moment, that's
It's powerful.
it's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Like, then obviously you have on the funnier side, you have customers trying to just push the system and see how far they can, to test the limits, right? So that's good for us in the sense that it keeps us on our toes, and you have to, our principle is always, what would a human agent do in that case? So if you're asking about a non-travel related question, if it's a general knowledge question, then answer, but try and steer the conversation, towards travel. So, it's things like that. I think, another a fun one is, the basic principle for us is obviously don't pretend that it's a human. So we have disclosures. If you're talking to Penny Voice, Penny will always say, I'm an AI. But at some points in a conversation, the technology gets so good that customers forget that. And then, I'm thinking back to an example where, a customer told Penny, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I thought you were an AI.
It's a testament to building a good system, man.
It's a
amazing.
validation that we're the vision is working, and customers really they feel it. They feel and I think this is what's important. It's building trust, right, with that customer, because if you think forward now to the AI becoming more capable, being able to do more, like, trust is really becoming more important.
Absolutely.
From, like, just answering questions to actually doing things and and things with stakes attached,
Yeah.
right? So it's still early days, but yeah.
Yeah, it's super important to Amazon, to Alexa as well. Like we knew very early on that we had a conviction that generative AI would bring all this new power to Alexa, that it would let us get closer to the original vision of the Star Trek computer and really make a difference in people's lives. But we knew that we couldn't sacrifice the characteristics that people rely on Alexa for, rely on the original Alexa, and being trustworthy, being factually accurate, being friendly, being helpful. Like all of those things are easy, like you said, in a sort of very narrow sense to ensure that with one prompt or with one utterance or 10 utterances that it follows those. When you have the infinite variations that a positive actor will try and introduce to your system, that's a challenge. And then you have the infinite variations that just regular people playing around with the system will introduce. And it is important for any kind of consumer-facing brand to make sure that at the end of the day, that AI product still reflects the brand identity and characteristics of their company.
Absolutely. I mean, this is so important. Like what we're actually building is the ability to have a conversation with our customers, right? Which it's previously we weren't talking to our customers. I'm talking about all companies.
Absolutely.
Like there was this wall in between us and our customers, right? User interfaces that were kind of rigid, and we tried to approximate possible customer decisions with UI design. Now we're actually having a real conversation. That is a game changer. It gives you the opportunity to actually, hear what they have to say and then fix what's not working and improve. And I think that's going to be what sets, the consumer brands of the future apart, is which companies are actually listening and improving their products and have this feedback loop.
And it does, I think, also provide an opportunity for companies to have this like longer term or more extended relationship with the customer, as opposed to just a point in time. I go to a website, I buy a flight, I'm done with it. When it knows that my anniversary is coming up in September and I usually take a trip for the anniversary, or knows my daughter's birthday's coming and she wants to go somewhere tropical or something like that, to have in a natural, like helpful and useful way to be a part of that customer's conversation in their life, it feels, it not quite ingratiates, but it engenders them more to your brand, because you're really helping them solve the problems that maybe they didn't realize they had yet.
And I mean, personalization, we're so early, but it helps solve, at least for us. And I think the same is probably true for yourself as well. It gives more optionality to the customer in the sense that we are able to now, instead of just showing them hundreds of options and if they're lucky, they pick one that's close to what they wanted. Right. Now we can show a set of options that are actually almost all perfect. Yeah. And it's the customer just has the work they do is to go from like almost certain to certain, instead of the gap narrows, and that means the customer is much more likely to actually get what they want and have a much more satisfied outcome. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Now, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, knowing all that you know from the several years of experimentation, what would you say?
I mean, hindsight always 2020, right? When we started, you have a gut feel that this technology is a game changer, but you don't really know what it means. You don't know how, to apply it yet. You have to actually get your hands dirty, put something in front of customers, change it, iterate. Right. So, I think for me, it's and this is kind of age old. It's like, don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem. For us, as an industry, I really think it's this planning task. It's kind of the effort involved in making that decision, right? Which AI really takes that burden away.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're automating it. It's not like the AI is making that decision on behalf of the customer. To the contrary, we're now giving the customer a much better set of options to choose from, so that, and taking away that decision paralysis, and the AI can say, no, we've gone through this before,
We got it, don't worry.
Yeah, let's not get stuck in this loop. So, I think that's number one. Fall in love with the problem and not, and not with the solution. And I think the user experience is really so important. We're really pushing the boundaries in terms of how the Penny user experience works, and getting to the point where the AI is deciding what to show to the user given the context, right? Which is a game changer. It's moving to a very fluid user interface where the AI essentially decides what is the best, set of modules or UI elements to show to a user to get to that matching of their intent. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in terms of just general user interface design.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And Amazon and Priceline were here inside the Amazon Alexa or the Amazon Experience area at CES. We had announced that when Alexa launched, Priceline is going to be a partner of Alexa Plus. What made you want to work with Amazon? What attracted you to this kind of relationship with our company?
So I think our brands are actually very well aligned, right? We're both at the forefront of figuring out how to apply AI to solving our various customer problems, right? And we're both leading e-commerce brands, right? We're both very focused on giving customers great deals. I think that's really important. So I think there's that sort of foundational DNA that we share. And also in terms of working together, it's been really great to actually see how our teams just gel. I'm very excited to see how we're going to push this technology to really deliver on that customer promise, right? And to make it super easy. It's not about replacing the old way. It's making it way, way better. And I think we're very aligned with that. And then obviously voice, with Alexa being a key, modality. I think, that's something that we realized early on with Penny. So I think on multiple levels we're aligned. So I'm super excited to see where this collaboration is going to go.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I can't wait to see what our teams are going to come up with next.
Awesome. Well,
Cobus, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Emerson. It's been great.